Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a lovely lunch and are ready for the afternoon session. I'm excited here. We've got a very diverse panel here to talk about where we're seeing actual efficacy and ROI from a number of different perspectives. So let's jump in. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to quickly introduce them, give 30 seconds on sort of what their organization does, and then we'll jump in. Start on the far end. Mm-hmm.
Hey there, Eric Levine. I'm with Avalar Health. We're a healthcare consulting firm. I work with our health plan clients, health system clients, digital health companies on strategy, operations, and our company really operates at the intersection of policy, business strategy, and operations.
Hi, Anwen. First and foremost, I'm an ER doc, trained that way, did that for many years. I'm also the medical director for virtual urgent care for Houston Methodist System, and I'm now also the vice chair of research for Center for Innovation. I think the only Houstonian in this room.
And I'm Nick Culbertson. I'm the managing director of Techstars AI Health Baltimore. We help founders take their company from early market traction to larger commercial traction, typically pre-seed or pre-series A. And before that, I ran a company called Panelists that used AI to help hospitals catch fraud.
Wonderful. Well, let's jump right into it. Nick, I'm going to start with you because you're at the forefront of the emerging technologies in some of these startup companies. Are we talking with these startup companies about actual value today, or are we still talking about potential value in the near future?
So I think I have an interesting perspective on this in that I started a company in 2012 and did a lot of fundraising in 2016 and 2018, pre-pandemic. And now I'm helping companies in the post-pandemic environment and in the generative AI environment. My company was an AI company, but not generative AI. And I think everything is different than it was 5-10 years ago. The number one thing that's different is that when you talk about delivering value or potential value, the stakes are much higher now for companies. When I was raising my pre-seed or Series A, we could talk about what we were going to accomplish. And based on the credibility, like a lot of hospital systems were saying, we want to be seen as innovative. We're willing to spend and invest on this project and hope it pays off. And I think over time, a lot of investors and a lot of health systems have been burned by companies that they gave a little bit too much leeway and did not pan out. And so now I think there's a lot more sophistication for investors and buyers to see more credibility. So you have to have your research published, you have to have commercial traction demonstrated, and you have to have a hard ROI for a customer to be willing to give you a chance. So that's one of the reasons in our program we spend so much time with companies to help them make sure they get that validation to ultimately get the investment and get the commercial traction.
Are there certain areas where you're seeing much more traction and much more scalability?
So I think there's a lot of promise to generative AI in healthcare. We've heard from a number of panels this morning about this. I won't repeat. But one thing I'll add is that I think there's some places in healthcare why generative AI can impact so much in healthcare. I think there's some areas where there's quicker wins. It's obvious that we're seeing this with scribe tools and the ambient tools to capture information. But I think one of the areas, just from my own experience, that I'm really excited about is the back office administrative tasks and workflows, where we can take off a lot of regulatory work or compliance work to make hospital systems more efficient, and also pull clinicians away from homework assignments outside of patient care. So every year, hospital systems collectively pay over $40 billion to maintain compliance of the 600 plus regulatory requirements of different federal and state agencies that they must adhere to keep all their boxes checked. And that money is usually spent on human labor. Hospital systems generally are addicted to labor. And that's how we solve our problems, is we have people do it. And so if we can use artificial intelligence to automate some of those compliance tasks or administrative tasks, that's where we'll be able to free up clinicians and have them focus on what matters most, which is patient care.
You're dealing directly with patient care. I imagine reducing the administrative burden is phenomenal.
Yes.
Are you seeing actual real change from AI beyond administrative?
Yeah, so I actually 100% agree with you, Nick, that the most benefit that I've seen thus far are in the admin roles. and in the ambient listening kind of scribing use cases. Clinically, I haven't seen much benefit, especially with hard ROI, in just clinical care delivery. So we love our ambient scribes. That's reducing our, what we call this pajama time. So ER docs spend like an average of 3 to 4 hours after every shift documenting. We're really seeing a reduction in that. But ROI-wise, it's an expensive product. So you're really gonna have to like take into account some of the softer wins, like less turnover, less physician burnout. I haven't seen just like a really strong case for financial ROI.
Is there concern about efficacy of the AI tools, or is it really just difficulty getting a hard ROI with clinical tools?
So the efficacy, I will also say that for the AI, we actually prefer a summative AI for the scribing versus a generative AI because of its prone to hallucinations. And there's just so much malpractice, ethical considerations, legal considerations for delivering healthcare that we actually prefer summative AI. And then, sorry, what was your other question?
Is it more of the efficacy versus the ROI issue?
So the efficacy, that's what I wanted to address. And then the ROI, we really,
Just
not quite sure we've seen it.
Now, Eric, you work mostly with payers. The payer side is a lot higher administrative expense than sort of clinical care delivery. Are they seeing a different perspective from an ROI perspective with AI?
Yeah, I think for payers, ROI can mean different things, and it means different things across different lines of business. So there's the ROI of reducing administrative burden. Absolutely, it's you can measure that. But I think when you're dealing with payers, there are other ways to think about value that resonate with them or may challenge them. So if you think about a Medicare Advantage plan, stars is important, risk adjustment's important. Changes to that may not have a direct ROI, or in the Medicaid space, if you think about winning reprocurement because of a standout solution, definitely. But I'd say payers are a lot harder to crack. One, I think they could be very risk averse in a lot of areas, and they really expect a 2-3 to 1 ROI. They won't even get in the door with you. So it's really about demonstrating the value, communicating the value, and really understanding what each payer's unique value drivers are. I think that's what I'm interested in too, is just seeing each payer is different, whether they're heavily Medicare, heavily Medicaid certain regions, and their state and federal push and pulls as well.
2 to 3x ROI for the payers. I'm banking on that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They will. You won't get in the door if you're not 2 to 3. And I'll just go up what you were saying, Nick. It's not even just the ROI. It has to be a similar population. So when we work with digital health companies, they'll come to us and say, we've got this great data, our products are great, it saves so much money, but then when you dig into the data and the studies they've published, it's with a very chronic, high needs, high risk population that's not reflective of the payer population, and have to have that tough conversation of saying, you're in the evidence generation space, so then we help create an evidence generation strategy. Like, how do you find a payer partner who will get on board with helping you generate the data you need for that population? So then you can go to a Medicare Advantage plan and say, well, yeah, we work for this more broad patient populations, or for a Medicaid plan. But I think a lot of times people think data is applicable, but Medicaid population is different from Medicare, different from commercial. So really understanding the payers' populations and translating ROI to that.
There was a fun recent MIT study that was across all industries. It said 95% of generative AI projects fail to deliver measurable business results. Is that true in healthcare? Is that true with the startups you're working with?
I think if you look at all companies formed, I'd be curious to know about companies selected because of the threshold for implementation is so high. I bet it's not 95% of actual implemented projects fail in healthcare. But I think if you look at all the startup ideas of technologies in healthcare, it might be even higher than 95%. And I think that's because the barrier, the threshold for acceptance in healthcare is so much higher. To go from idea to implementation, one, you have to have the credibility, you have to have the clinical understanding, you have to pass the regulatory, security, privacy, all that. You have to have the right key stakeholders, a decision by committee that happens in healthcare to be able to get in. And then if you even get approved, then it's the integration interoperability challenges. And so there are still really big, really impressive, proven AI projects that are taking a long time to roll out in hospital systems because of all those barriers. And so I don't know. I'm curious what An's opinion on this is.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously take meetings with a lot of vendors and startups all the time, and even just sometimes in the first 5 minutes, I can tell that we're not going to be able to
They're not ready.
get the doctors to, jump on board. They're not ready, and the implementation would be just such a hassle. And I don't think the companies always see that, so I think that's probably where you come in. But just from the physician standpoint, like, I do feel like we went to medical school, like, I know how to deliver care. So I'm not really needing the AI tool to help me treat a patient. I need it to help me, like, do my administrative tasks, make sure I'm compliant, maybe document. But I think you'll be hard pressed to find a physician that is asking for an AI to help deliver patient care. And my other hat is a scientist and a researcher. So the most beneficial science projects are where you identify a gap. So it's like your job to go to the literature, be like, oh, nobody's studying kidney stones, for example. I want to study kidney stones. Those are the most beneficial proposals. The AI companies need to understand that. Like, don't come to me and give me, a pitch for something I don't need. Identify the gap and then come to us then.
Can I add on to that? Because I think from the study what it said was the reason the adoption was so low the reason the success rate was so low is because of adoption.
Integration to scalable workflows was their number one primary reason, was they didn't integrate well. And they didn't understand how to integrate well. It's just more of here's a great tool, let's figure out how, surely it will work.
Yeah, and it's that human component. Like, yes, how do you get people to go use the tool?
Yes.
If you have a listen agent, you actually have to pull your phone out and turn it on. And if that's not native in the workflow, getting physicians to do things they're not used to do is really hard.
And I think that's the key, is finding either the right partner to go in to help with integration, or finding the partner who's at the company to be the champion for the tool to integrate it. We're seeing that now with a client who has sort of a designated AI champion for this tool, and it's been a struggle to figure out how to integrate it into their processes. And 6 months into it, they're still sort of now into seeing, okay, do we have the right processes going forward? Are we using the tool correctly? And I think one potential misstep is over-promising and not being realistic about the challenges, the limitations, because if your client, your client's taking your product and has one vision for it, and it's not the true fit and true purpose of it, I think that sort of dooms it to fail. Whereas if you think you can come in and say, listen, this can take off 10% of this part of your work, and here's how you use it, and here's what we see as the right workflow, what does your workflow look like, and map it out with them to be that collaborative partner with them, I think that at least can set it up for more success and more realistic adoption.
So what is the profile then of a winner in this space? Is it, to your point, is it discrete problems and solutions? Is it champions internally? What is the profile of the winner that makes it scalable and successful?
I think it's the pull through. I think it's not just having the right tool. I think you can have the best tool that works, has the best outcomes, but if you can't integrate it to a care manager's workflow, to a payment integrity specialist workflow, things like that, it's just going to be bound to fail. Or if they're trying to use it for the wrong purpose and trying to shoehorn it, into just the wrong thing. I mean, that same client, sort of the tool they're testing out is to help with RFP writing and sort of it's that literature. Then they were sort of testing it if they could use it for competitive intelligence and finding it like failing at that completely. And I think if the tool had been pitched at that and the client would go in and use it, they would probably pull the plug in it. I mean, knowing that this tool wasn't meant for that, they were more accepting of failure and unsuccess. It was them trying to expand the use of it. So I think that is a better model of finding that AI champion, finding the workflow, and then expanding and working in. So I feel like starting small and discrete is your best way of success.
So everything Eric said, we would say in the startup world is product market fit, which is I 100% agree. The other thing I would add on to that in terms of picking winners is the founder market fit. Is the person, do they have the credibility to really understand the problem? Do they come from the space? Someone's not just going to parachute in a hospital and be like, I can do this better. Like, you actually have to know the workflow and understands the pain points. And so I think another reason why the threshold is so much higher, because you have to actually have the exposure to industry to know how to solve the problem.
Sometimes I feel like valuations right now have gotten so high that they have to go after some bigger things and stretch much further. Are you all seeing that as well? Where they've raised a huge amount of money, or high valuation, so they're trying to sell a much bigger project than they probably should start with.
I think I would agree with that statement. I feel that's true, and sort of biting off too big of a bite.
Yeah.
Interesting. From a physician standpoint, how early do you actually want to get involved with these companies?
We really want like a polished product. So there are situations where we'll get in from the ground floor, but maybe with the promises that if we help you refine and tune your product, that there's going to be something in it for us, whether or not whether we get a free discount or we get an enterprise agreement where all of our physicians can use the tool. But we'd really prefer a polished product, because like a physician is always stretched 110% already for delivering patient care. The PCPs are getting scheduled 10, 15 minutes, new patients. So we're seeing the patients, we're documenting, then we're having to be compliant. So the last thing we want is more work to learn to use another tool. And there's a lot of physicians out there who are on the older side, and they do not want to pick up any more skills. They're not willing to change their practice. So those are not the champions you're going to go after, right? But if the physician, if I get old cranky Dr. Jones to finally pick up the phone and use the ambient AI and it's hallucinating, that person will never use it again. So it needs to really be accurate, easy to use. Please don't add more keystrokes and clicks to our workflow, because it already takes me 12 clicks to sign an APP chart, and we cannot do any more of that. So it has to be like not burdensome to use.
Do you feel it's like a little middle ground sometimes, where if you don't get the physicians involved early, you don't actually understand the way physicians will use it, but at the same time, physicians sometimes don't want to get involved early until it's a polished product?
Yeah, and you'll have the different populations of physicians. Right? Like I'm very willing to get in early. I'm willing to check the ambient AI scribe note, make sure it's not hallucinating and saying that I did something that I didn't do. So that's going to be like huge legal and ethical consideration right there. Like it's saying I did something that I didn't do because I'm billing for that, and then legally I'm liable for that. So I'm very willing to get in on the ground, and I'm very willing to be like the AI champion for this product. Once it's then polished, then I can get old cranky Dr. Jones, right, to use it. But you'll have your different populations of physicians. I think both will be necessary.
I think so. We've got a lot of market uncertainty happening in the healthcare world. I think we've recently had some legislation passed in the Big Beautiful Bill that's going to create headwinds for different organizations in different ways. We've had years of health system financials going up and down. We've had Medicaid redetermination in some states. How is all this market uncertainty and financial strain and headwinds going to change the expectations for ROI and polished products going forward? Do you see companies saying, look, we're desperate now for lower costs, so we'll be more open, or is it we don't have money to spend on expensive AI products, so this better have a 5x ROI? How do you see that balance, and how do you see that evolving over the next few years? Nick, you started out by saying when you raised early on that the world changed in 10 years. What does the next 2 years look like?
Yeah, I think one thing that when I look at companies, I look for something called layered unlock, which is where there are multiple things true at this time as why now for this company. Many times those layers that are unlocked are things that are going to happen, regulatory trends that are going to happen. And I'll just speak, so I flew into Dallas today from Baltimore. Maryland is what used to be an all-payer, well, it still is, but it's soon not to be, but it used to be an all-payer model. And so that meant if you got an appendectomy at Johns Hopkins or University of Maryland, you're paying the same amount for it. And a part of that process, I think there were 36 in the country, and now they went up 13th. It was like a great model, worked, but a part of the regulatory trends that's going away because they had a federal waiver and the waiver's being pulled. And so now every hospital in Maryland is having to adjust. And in some cases, it's going to be good for them. So Hopkins compete with Duke and Yale and other AMCs, but other hospitals may be hurt by it. The one thing that is common with change is that there's financial impact. And that's where every health system or whatever payer provider is going to be looking for ROI. And so while these types of changes will be headwinds for companies to innovate and adopt new things, there might be less of an appetite to try something new. At the same time, there's always an interest for savings. And so for the companies that do have that layered unlock and have some type of clear ROI and are polished, I think what the result of that is you see a bimodal distribution of success. You see some companies that are killing it because they're able to get that unlocked and they have a clear ROI. Everyone else is struggling and really kind of behind the curve.
Is that the truth? And from the payer perspective?
Yeah, I think they're going to fall more along the, not willing to sort of throw money at anything, but you have to speak their language, I think, and that just gets back to what is their value. Even before the big beautiful bill in Medicare Advantage, they've been slammed with lower Medicare Advantage rates, whereas Medicare Advantage used to be the market of, to say frankly, the cash cow for insurers, and it's just been a tough between star ratings changes and that program getting more competitive rates, and now we're seeing changes in utilization, and so they're shifting, and finances are getting squeezed, and plans are having to make hard decisions on supplemental benefits, and so you really need to understand each payer's unique challenge, each market's unique challenge, and then those value drivers to speak to them. If you can show a plan how you can improve their performance in the Medicare Advantage Stars program, that's going to be great. If you can go to an employer plan and show improved employee retention or productivity, or those are the kind of metrics that'll resonate with them and be more get more willingness to invest in a product that will help bend the cost curve. Some of the tight financial areas they're seeing now, I'd say.
Are they worried that some of these tools that purport to help your MA program will eventually get challenged by the government?
It's interesting. I think, at least in the current administration, there's sort of a give with one hand, take with another. I think we've seen a lot of interest in AI and technology, and so I think there are definitely some positive tailwinds there. At the same time, you'll go ahead and see some reform somewhere else. So I think it's a little bit hard to say, but I'd say general favorability towards technology at the federal level, but at the state level is where you're seeing a lot of different activity and sort of the Wild West of state policy. And in the big beautiful bill, they sort of tried to do a moratorium on the state activity. That got pulled. So they were trying to say, state, we're going to put in a federal mandate. The states don't, ignore all the state stuff, and that didn't go through. So really, every state, as an AI vendor and a tool, you need to make sure that you are, part of your value is staying compliant. And if you're going to go to a payer with a tool that's not compliant with the state regulation, let alone then any federal regulations that can come by, there's an ROI right there that's just sort of null if you can't prove compliance.
A lot of these technologies are black box. How is compliance going to happen? Does anyone have an answer for that?
I don't know that, actually this is just a real quick funny story. So the product that we built was a machine learning classifier, and every hospital we talked to would ask about, is it black box? Mm-hmm. We actually designed it so it wasn't black box, so every feature in our classifier translated into some compliance statement so that you can understand what was the reason that you got such a high score. So there's a direct translation that helped the compliance officer getting the results to understand and lead the investigation. I think there are ways to build non-black box solutions, and I think that's, again, another high barrier for entry in healthcare, but there are ways to do it.
We've seen a few with audit trails come through our shop, and I think they get differing prioritization depending on who's looking at it. From a physician perspective, do you care about audit trail, or do you just need to know it works no matter what?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So compliance, and then all the ethical and legal considerations. So how long is the company keeping this recording, this video? What is their data security? Who's going to be able to hack in and see the patient getting surgery? And then we, as ER docs, we're in a very high malpractice field. We don't like anything that we do recorded. So, even the ambient AI, it's very concerning to a lot of my colleagues. How long are you keeping this recording for? Can this be used to sue me? So, absolutely, I would say that's.
I just learned something recently that ambient doesn't, that they own the data, they own the recordings.
They do, yeah.
That shocked me.
The vendor is responsible for the safekeeping of the recording, and in the business agreement, many times we'll agree, hey, 30 days, 60 days, you'll delete it. And so when there is eventually going to be a lawsuit and they go back for discovery, that's not something that's discoverable.
Was that why for peer review discovery protection? Because Epic, you own the data.
Correct. I think the hospitals just didn't want to be responsible for safekeeping of the data. And again, a lot of these technologies are black box. So if you're using an image-based AI specifically, like we're not going to know what to do with that.
Was it a compliance reason or was it a data storage reason? Because it's also very voluminous.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Fascinating.
Probably both, if I had to guess.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
You brought up a great point, Epic, and ownership of data. Epic is just announced at their last UGM the 160 plus AI models that they're bringing forward. Oracle has been making a big splash in the AI world, both from an ERP and they do have the EHR from buying Cerner. They're both lobbying heavily at the federal level and with CMS. How does Epic and Oracle's sort of market positioning impact ROI expectations from working with, say, a startup company if it's somewhere on Epic's roadmap in 2 to 3 years down the line? Or Epic could theoretically do it. How does that change expectations? Do we think, what happens with Epic and Oracle in 2 years?
Well, I just say from my personal experience, if Epic is saying they are going to do what you're going to do, even if they can't prove it, that's a problem. If they can do what you're doing 30% as good as you're doing it, that's still a problem because most health systems want to adopt Epic and use every tool. It's cheaper and more efficient than having 100 different tools and having 100 different vendors. So the consolidation is a real problem. And I'll keep saying this, it just adds a higher bar, a higher threshold, because you can't prove that you're 10% better than Epic. You have to be phenomenally better than Epic. I was really fortunate that when I started my company, Judy Faulkner came to Hopkins for a lunch because they were implementing Epic at the time. And we got this opportunity to sit down with her. And I was a medical student at the time when I was starting my company. And I was thinking to myself, I don't want to do this if this powerful company is going to be doing the same thing. So I went on a limb and I asked her at lunch and I said, this is what we're doing. Are you guys doing this? And she said, that's really interesting. You know, we have hundreds of problems that we're trying to solve. And that's a problem. But we have a lot of bigger problems that we're trying to solve. And so she told me flat out that, no, that's not something we're going to work on. And so having that insight then gave me the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to work on this because it's a big problem, but not big enough for Epic to work on it right now.
Yeah, it should be exponentially better or exponentially faster
Yeah,
than Epic.
great point.
So we needed it tomorrow. Epic doesn't have an ambient scribing tool as of right this moment, and we need it tomorrow. So that's where we'll get in with the vendors.
Do you think Epic and Oracle are going to drive the roadmaps for AI development?
Well, only in my personal experience, I've just seen Epic date all the vendors, give them a little bit of access here and there, a little bit of information, then take the best part of all the vendors and make their own product, which is usually like 60% is good. But if they're going to give it to us in an enterprise agreement for free, there's no competition. So that's my experience.
Eric, how do the payers react to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a similar thing. If the payer's massive vendor is going to offer the thing, they're gonna take that up. But I think on the payer side, another way to sort of get some attention is putting skin in the game. So when we're working with digital health companies and are thinking about their selling, their value proposition, to my earlier point about having the data, if they don't have the data, one way around that is guaranteed savings. So if you can go into a payer and you're willing to put some money on the table and you adjust your pricing and put some guarantees, they're more willing to give you that shot. And then it's key to prove your success and integrate with and around that, because payers too, sometimes you'll see just overlapping vendors left and right, and while it's not as much as maybe a monopoly, I guess you would say, than on the health system side where you've just got the EHR vendor totally dug in there.
Yeah. A lot of these models, companies are also built on the same foundational LLM or generative AI model. There's not a huge number of models for them to build off of. And then you have Epic and Oracle and the payers who own a lot of who have access to data and tool sets. How does that evolve over time? What are these companies actually able to get investable, differentiated moats? Yeah. Or does their ROI get eroded over time no matter what if they don't have a proprietary data set?
That's such a hard question.
I don't know if there's enough understanding on the buyer side to really have that level of insight of sort of the base model. I think it's really about the functionality and sort of the output, and if you can demonstrate your output is of use, I don't think they really connect. Oh, well, if this one vendor's on Llama and this other vendor's also on Llama, but I think that sometimes for the buyer it's just a bit too technical, which is interesting. I find we're in an area where there's a lot of maybe potential interest, but also a big knowledge gap.
I think one of the problems with this is the commoditization of technology and the race to the bottom. And we saw this over the summer when we were accepting applications to our next class. We saw so many niche scribe companies. Like, we're the scribing tool for this and scribe for that. Everyone wants to do a scribe because we've seen this big success stories. And then I'm blanking on the name, but there was a company that released the free scribe. Anyone remember what it was? Doximity. Thank you. So Doximity released a free scribe, and literally I saw at least 30 startup companies' business plans like just implode. Because if someone is offering a free version of it, why would you pay for some niche products to do it? And so I think that is going to be a problem where some businesses that are making a lot of money right now and solving a lot of problems, there's going to be something cheaper version, and if they are all built on the same models, or there's not that many models out there, someone can release it cheaper and faster, then we're going to see a lot of companies implode from the bottom.
So I want to ask one more question, then open it up to the audience. How many years before AI pervades all of the administrative pieces? We've heard clinical's different, but from an administrative standpoint, how many years before AI just pervades everything?
Well, that website said 2027.
There was that website that said 2027.
I have no idea.
I'm definitely comfortable with 2 years or less.
Yeah.
For sure.
2 years or less
I'm very
before
comfortable saying 2
every
years.
piece of administrative
If
workflow.
it touches it, not taken over, but yeah, touches it for sure.
It's bold.
That's bold. Do you think that health system IT infrastructure is capable of executing that in 2 years?
Mine is, but no. What else? What else is the health system going to do? They're facing, provider shortages, human labor shortages, training shortages. What else is the health system going to do? That's a great investment, in my opinion.
I guess I'd ask, is your question that it's pervasive in touching some aspect
Some
of
aspect,
it, or
not- yeah.
taking
Yeah,
over?
I'll
Because
tell-
I can see it in some aspect, but there's just some places where it's never going to touch. And it's funny, I laugh because, plans have been using AI since like the 70s, right? Like predictive analytics for population health and risk stratification. And it's really this generative AI that's really exploded. And, on the plan administrative side, I think between prior auth, utilization management, sure, it's definitely going to play a role, but it's not going to be making decisions just from a pure regulatory perspective. You're seeing states totally outright ban that. And just from a PR perspective, no plan's going to want to be, found to have denials from an AI that a human never reviewed. So I think there's just going to be some use. You'll find some areas of payment integrity, some compliance, they may, but I don't think it's really going to overtake sort of all plan operations. So, maybe 2 years where it's sort of, everyone's got a little bit of a flavor of it, I could see that, but it's going to take a long time to really gain the trust, show the value, and if at all.
Right. I'd like to open up to questions, if anyone has questions in the last minute or two. None? All right. I'll ask one more then. How do we calibrate our expectations for ROI over the next 18 months to a few years?
What do you mean by that?
So as we think about it right now, we've heard, okay, 2 to 3x, but there's a lot of uncertainty happening, and there's a lot of rapid development. I would say AI is developing much faster than any previous generation of technology. How do we recalibrate and say, okay, over the next 6 to 12 months, we should expect and calibrate that the following developments will likely take place, and we should be expecting exponential improvement in ROI and efficacy of these tools? Or no, we think it's just going to sort of incrementally keep improving over the next 2 years, and ROI will stay about the same for a while longer.
It's a really interesting question. It makes me think. I heard the CEO of Olive AI, that AI company that imploded before generative AI came out. he was talking about how they were doing price discovery for their product, and they were talking to their first few customers, and they were like, what if I could get you a 10x ROI? And he was like, that sounds too good to be true. I don't believe it. And he said, all right, what about a 2x? And he was like, I don't really have time for a 2x. And he was like, 4x? And so he was literally just trying to like back into pricing to get the right number.
Right.
And so I feel like it might not, I don't know that we'll get unreasonable expectations of ROI because pricing was always going to be, there's always going to be a counterbalance to it. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Eric?
I don't know. The interesting thing too is when you think about some of like the AI resource needs, it's not a product that gets cheaper the more you use it, almost quite the opposite of the more users you put on the platform, the larger the cost. So I don't know if there's a sort of a cap unless the tool is really able to just slash savings. And you know, we found this magical gold mine of we were treating patients the wrong way and now they're not developing this disease. So I almost think it's limited by the price of the tool than just how great the outcomes have to be.
Except that company is going to save $300 million. We were talking about it earlier.
Yeah. What do you think as a physician?
I mean, these numbers are just like crazy to me. 2x, 10x, 4x. Like, I'll tell you, like for our ambient scribe, like we were 3% increase in billing. I think we have an image-based AI to help with OR turnover. We were very impressed with a 10% increase in case turnover. So I've never heard these numbers. It's absolutely ludicrous for 2x, 4x, 10x. And so I think we're all just incrementally happy with any sort of improvement.
Yeah.
And, obviously addressing the soft things, physician burnout, labor shortage, utilizing clinicians where they can be best deployed because healthcare is very siloed. This is not an AI conversation, but healthcare is very siloed. So if I can get, the endocrinologist from one suburb of Houston to virtually see a patient in another, that's where I really see the value. But these numbers, it's never going to hit that.
We are out of time, but I did see someone who does want to ask a question, so I will ask for Grace here.
We've heard so much about avoidable cost. Would AI address any of that? Can you give a summary of what those costs are and how we expect that to be addressed?
And when you say avoidable costs, is it healthcare delivery avoidable costs, like I'm ordering a CAT scan or a study that's not needed, or healthcare delivery avoidable cost as an administrative burden?
I think it generally refers to healthcare delivery, including patient and things like medication usage and all the other elements that contributes to readmissions, relapses. I mean, these are elements of avoidable costs that maybe AI will address. I'm just trying to see if there's a forecast.
There's a huge field addressing exactly what you're worried about, the readmissions, the patients going to 10 ERs in 10 days. A lot of that is in the remote patient monitoring space. Mm-hmm. So a lot of devices, sending patients home, making plans to check on patients so they're not coming back unnecessarily. There's a huge space, addressing that. In terms of like administrative burden, like, do I need like 5 secretaries? There's definitely also AI addressing that part as well. So we're all studying it.
And there's a lot of dollars in that avoidable cost of readmission rates from a hospital perspective on STARS and in Medicare Advantage and STARS. So there's definitely
we're very motivated to decrease that.
Thank you all very much.